All right, guys, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We got quite a few people. We were kind of curious if the World Series was going to hold some folks back, but apparently most of you are not baseball fans, or you've got it on in the background nice and quiet. So we'll go ahead and get started. So tonight we wanted to touch base on both the DAC meeting, the Drone Advisory Committee, that meeting that Dave was able to attend and got some great information from, and kind of share some of that out with you guys. And again, kind of rehash the request for some videos for Drone Safety Awareness Week that's coming up. So, Dave, do you want to kind of jump in and talk about the DIC meeting?
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief. I've got a couple of slides. Let's see if I can figure out how to get them over to. Oh, looks like no. Drag and drop. Okay. Why? Oh, I had this all.
Had this going earlier.
Yeah, it was working earlier. Why is it? It won't let me. It won't let me copy in slides. Oh. Okay. Well, I will do it without slides. So the Drone Advisory Committee, which is the and FAA Advisory Committee, was held on October 17th down in Washington, D.C. So I was able to attend as a spectator, so I'm certainly not a member. That's something that we would like to do, and it does appear that as you gain more prominence and help out more, it looks like a lot of other political situations, you can help get yourself nominated through as they add people to the DAC. So we'll keep after that. The things I did want to mention that I drove down, stayed a couple days in DC. This was on my dime, so just reiterate that we're doing this as a nonprofit with the FPVFC.
Say, Dave, do you know how long the Drone Advisory Committee has been around?
Since 2016. And so 2016, it was not terribly effective. 2017, they held, I think, one meeting, and then it started to kick into gear at the last two meetings. So there was a prior meeting in June down in Arlington, Virginia, and then they're trying to run them every 3 months now. So they're adding a lot more rigor and getting work done and recommendations back to the FAA, and it appears to be very well received. We had the deputy administrator to the Department of Transportation show up and speak to the group. So that was a nice kudo for this organization. And the way this process works is the FAA asks a group of industry and operators for input. The input is created, and then the recommendations are fed back to the FAA. And I'll share a couple of schedules to convey how it's still a little suspect. For example, in remote ID, we provided input to the FAA on September 4. It was approved by the DAC on October 17, and there's supposed to be an NRPM issued on December 20 around remote ID. And then in January, the DAC is supposed to come back and comment on the input that was given by the DAC. So you can see that those schedules don't quite line up. It's like, no, wait a second. The DAC provided input. I think that should have made it into the notice for rulemaking. But then the FAA is going to provide feedback to the DAC after the rulemaking is provided on December 20. So I'd mention this because it's this is the federal government. It's not a well-oiled machine. There's a lot of being there in person, I think, is infinitely useful because a lot of what appears to be getting done is done through personal relationships. And so schmoozing and chatting with people in the long breaks is definitely a way to be effective. I'd welcome also any interruptions as we go through this. That's to make this useful to folks on the line. A couple of the things I wanted to touch on, there were three, they called them tasking groups. And so it's effectively a task force. The Drone Advisory Committee asks, they assign a team lead to go off and study a problem. And they asked for a 90-day turnaround, or actually less than about a 60-day. So we came back, and there were three topics. One, and there's on the FAA DAC website, there's a pretty good PDF. What is it? About 180 pages. So you can scroll through it and find references to pretty much everything I'll talk about. But I thought I'd just share some of the highlights to hopefully pique your interest a little bit. So the three tasking groups that were assigned back in June were remote ID, 2 was security, and 3 was the 107 waiver process. The 107 waiver process is a good point because obviously it has to do with commercial only. And so what I'm finding is it behooves us to stay very close to what's going on in commercial because there's a lot of, every once in a while something will come up that will be directly applicable to recreational. So it's critical that we're there in the room at that point. I was able to get on the task force for remote ID, and so I was able to have some small part in helping to influence that for the benefit of FPV. So that's the essence of what we want to try to do as we're going forward. Get involved, collaborate, work, change from the inside. And so the other thing I wanted to mention briefly is the new tasking groups due to be presented to the DAC in January 2020 are beyond visual line of sight challenges, facility maps, and unmanned traffic management. So let me go back through and hit a little bit of detail. And again, please interrupt with any questions. And I'll try to keep this brief, and I really welcome any questions either through Discord or through the website or via email if there are additional questions.
Just real quick before you get started, Dave, we did do a meeting on kind of what was came out of the remote ID. So that is up on our Facebook. If you did miss that, we did do a one of these town halls kind of discussing what came out of the remote ID tasking group for the last phase. And you can check that out on our website, or on our YouTube channel. So
great highlight, and I'll just run through this quickly so as not to bore everyone. A big piece of the recommendation was referencing the ASTM F38, which is a work group 64041, as a minimum operation of procedure. That means that there was about a year and a half worth of work on monitoring and tracking UASs that had gone on with the ASTM. Let's see, American Standards, Trades and Measure, Tables and Measures is, I think, what ASTM stands for. So it's an international standards body. And so this is a standard that hopefully will be picked up around the world, which will help create some level of consistency across borders. So this happens frequently, that the FAA and other federal agencies point to an ASTM standard, and then they redline it. What they don't like, they cross out, and then what they want to add, they'll add. But it's a great starting point, and that's what we did with this remote task force. Some of the key provisions were that there is a tiered or layered approach. From an unequipped to a equipped with telemetry and GPS operating in a small radius on to then envisioning into beyond visual line of sight. And so those three layers have additional technology requirements. and then an FPV drone is considered a non-equipped, and I spent a fair amount of time asking and pressing that we made sure that that was something that we kept in there. So far so good. As I mentioned, the dates on the next steps for the remote ID are the NPRM is December 20, and then the FAA comments back to the DAC on, okay, we approve the input that you provided to us on October 17. Now in January, they'll play back what they felt. Next one was a security piece of work. This was the task force lead on this was the CEO of AUVSI, pardon me. And so a very professional piece of work on this one. They came up with, and this is, again, it's in the PDF, they came up with 6 recommendations, and I'll rattle through these quickly and welcome any questions. The first was OEMs should equip their UAS with geofencing capabilities. 2, federal government should make available a consolidated, standardized, and up-to-date database for critical infrastructure and TFR issues that are machine readable. So anyone using LANs today would recognize that, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had, a federated or a federal database that all the TFRs, NOTAMs, et cetera, could be understood and turned into something a little closer to English than we have to interpret a NOTAM today. So that was the request or the recommendation. Number 3 was OEM should create alerts for the UAS operators when their UAS is approaching a sensitive flight area. Number 4 was the OEMs should equip the UAS with ADS-B in. And so we talked about this, I think, in some detail on the remote ID section as well. So this is something that DJI is doing with all of their drones above 250 grams. The 5th item was OEMs should explore performance. I called it a limp mode, and so when you approach a sensitive area, so that you're not just stopped, and so they're suggesting that the drone gets slowed down. The sixth item was OEM should explore equipage of DAA, or detect and avoid. This one is a nightmare for us because this says, oh my gosh, all of a sudden the drone gets really heavy, because the detect and avoid requirements that the FAA is thinking about are very significant, like being able to detect something the size of a drone 2,000 feet away. And so it's usually a combination of electronics, and it starts to kick up the weight a lot. So that's one of our, as we think about a viable drone that can operate even a little bit beyond visual line of sight, that's the one that really scares us. Okay. Questions on those, on either of those areas?
There's a little bit of chatting in the general chat there. Just Josh was asking about ADS-B in. Does that mean they can control your drone?
Good question. No, absolutely not. This is not a command and control. ADS-B in is exclusively a transponder that tells the world, here I am. Here's my digital license plate. Here's who I am, and here's my lat, lon, and altitude. And
yeah,
also
I started Googling.
Oh, it's a good question. Good question. Okay. Did I miss? I wasn't looking at the.
I think that was
screen.
the only question there.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. The 107 waiver process. Now, this one to me is interesting because for those of us interested in getting our 107, this gives us a feeling for how things are going on the commercial side of things, even though we are within FPVFC primarily focused in recreational. So the recommendations that in this group blew me away. So in about a 60-day time frame, they surveyed 107 operators across the country, and they got back 632 responses to their survey. They had 7 recommendations that I'll rattle off, and so this was such an incredibly ground up or grassroots piece of work that these folks went out, listened to 107 operators, and said, what are your problems? What are your successes? What do you think we should do to improve the waiver process for 107? So, in terms of completeness and a thoughtful piece of work, boy, this one was a really nice piece of work. So the recommendations were expiring waivers should auto-renew, modify drone zone so the operator does not have to update non-consequential information. 3, FAA should create a checklist to satisfy safety cases. 4, FAA should consider streamlined approval for those trained by an operator with experience relative to that waiver. 5, FAA should consider streamlined process for groups of operators. 6, FAA should increase transparency and accountability of approval. 7, the FAA should require approvers to take the training. So you can get a feeling for this as you read these recommendations, like, ooh, this is really, this is working with a bureaucracy. If there's anyone who has their 107 and has gotten waivers, they know that they can take a fair amount of time, as in, sometimes months, which is, completely, no way to run a business. And if it's BV LOS, they still have a very high percentage rate of declines. So one of the things that is clear is that the FAA plays a game of, well, nope, this won't pass. And so it's like, stop, give us an understanding of what is it that you want. Show us examples. And so that has been taken on. And Jay Merkel was emphatic that they have added examples and they like the idea of a checklist and they will consider these inputs. So that's important from the perspective of a turning point of a bureaucracy that is sort of chuckling. You can see the individual with decline, stamping the paper as it comes across their desk, and it looks like that might be changing. So that's positive from that perspective. Okay, then I wanted to quickly talk about the 3 tasking groups that are assigned and are due to come back to the DAC in January 2020. One is the Beyond Visual Line of Sight challenges. The next one is facility maps. The other is unmanned traffic management. I was able to get on the BVLOS tasking group, so I'm thrilled about that. That to me is the next, if we are able to get agreement and support on remote ID followed by beyond visual line of sight in the United States, that will break open the ability for commercial drones, which we will reap the benefit of that on the recreational side, because the scale and the quality and the rigor with which these aircraft need to be created will be great, and we will, as I say, reap the benefit of that. The big challenge there that we see, as I mentioned earlier, is the detect and avoid. Facilities maps. This one is also really important to us. I'm trying to get on this group. No luck so far. I've asked the individual who's leading the facilities map tasking group. This is important to us from the perspective of, if you fly in controlled airspace and you have an airport near you, and you look at the facility map, it's like, what a second, 0? Near the airport, 0 out, I can't fly at all. And so what we're trying to do is bring up the idea of, could we at least fly to 100 feet if we're really close? Or could we entertain the notion of shielded operations like New Zealand has? So this is absolutely an area where we'd love to provide some influence on and collaboration on the facilities maps. Unmanned traffic management. Working in global tech for 4 decades, this is an enormous IT opportunity for large companies. Google is in this with Open Sky. Airbus announced a system. AirMap is into this. We're pretty sure Amazon has their own. And so there are about 7 or 8 UTMs. So if you think about it, the Lance system is a flight plan authorization capability, and it has some AirMap and Kitty Hawk has some really nice additional features. UTM is air traffic management for unmanned aircraft. So, and the idea is that they're pretty sure it'll be a federation of UTMs across the United States. So that's really significant in the sense that that's a very different architecture from what we have in the air traffic control for manned aircraft. So I'm not trying to get involved with that one, and I think that this is an area that will be interesting for us to watch. I'm hoping that that does not affect us in recreational a lot. If we fly BV LOS, it absolutely will. Okay, that was it. So I'm hoping that I'm in New York, so it's a pretty quick hop, 6-hour drive or a quick flight down to DC. It's worth it to me to be there in person. There's no question I was able to get on the BVLOS task group because I walked up to the leader and chatted with him and volunteered to help. Same thing with facilities maps.
Yeah, there's no substitute for being there in person.
I agree. Plus, this was the first advisory group, not just within the DAC, but across the federal government that was streamed live. And so, as Dan was sharing with me, they had some problems, and they'd go dark for a bit. But I was able to introduce myself to the marketing people who were running the production of the streaming, and they were all trying to make sure it was running as well as they possibly could. To me, that's a benefit, but again, there's absolutely, they cleverly have large breaks, and so you're able to walk around and network and schmooze with people on these long breaks, and that's where a lot of the decisions get made, at least in my humble estimation. Comments, questions? And again, I reference, so I just flew over this to try to get provide a little bit of an understanding. The document, the PDF that's out on the FAA DAC, it really is quite a good document. Or if you've got a question, ask one of us, and I'm certainly happy to dig into it.
You want to mention anything about people that were there, and I don't know, how did the AMA interact with this meeting?
Oh yeah. So yeah. So the AMA president, Rich Hansen, has a seat on the drone advisory committee. He was not part of either of the prior tasking groups, and he is not part of any of the upcoming 3 tasking groups. He also remained completely quiet through a very vocal and interactive 6 or 7 hours of presentations. So AMA not really well represented. I think we can start to stand tall that we are helping, and we are more participative with the Drone Advisory Committee than the AMA. Now they could tell us, well, they're not, that's worthless. They're not being effective. The DAC is ineffective. Well, we don't know that yet. And so the idea is we're going to try to be collaborative with the FAA. It's worked for the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, very, very well. That's the path we're on. The other folks that were in the room, very vocal people from Amazon. Brendan Schulman was there from DJI, AirMap, Skyward.
Is it Boulder, Colorado's mayor?
Yes,
or is it a different Colorado?
Colorado Springs from Colorado. Wade Troxel, a delightful gentleman, and he participates. So I mean, this man is a busy mayor, and he calls in, and he has been on the various task forces, and he's representing the League of Cities across the United States. So just a bright, energetic guy, and wow, is he interested in helping out? I mean, he puts forward ideas like, if we're asking people to train, we can give them access to things like some of the parks that we're calling off bounds, and he's going to write a proclamation during National Drone Week. So we'll get a copy of the proclamation will publicize that. There are also the National Airport Managers Association, an association I did not know that existed. There was the AOPA, the Airline and Operators Pilots Association. Hopefully I'm not destroying what that abbreviation means. And
what was that? I mentioned it in the chat. It was like CONUS 30 or something like that.
CONUS 30, was that an
That was
company?
the lady who, it was one of the task force, I believe, previously. The lady who was up on the podium and talking about the careless and the clueless.
Angela Stubblefield. She's a force to be reckoned with, in a very positive way. She's a Marine officer. She's been in Marine intelligence, federal intelligence. She's working the security side of the UAS integration office, and so she is. She works a lot of the classified side of drone integration.
Yeah, the yang to the
did
yang.
anybody point out that we have 0 casualties?
Yes, and in fact, there was quite a bit of discussion, and we can thank Brendan Schulman for bringing that up. And that's one of the things that the downside of being a spectator is I am not allowed to say a word. And so, I'm sitting there, I'm standing on my tongue, and you can't say anything. And so we can thank Brendan Schulman for speaking up a number of times. 1, no casualties. 2, it was the day after the young boy was saved out in the Midwest with a flare capability. And so Brendan brought that up and he said, we're keeping track, and that's the 290th life that has been saved by a drone. And so I was like, yes. So
yeah, with DJI's current release that they just came out with, that Mavic Mini or whatever.
Yes.
Their whole intent that I saw so far with that is that it wouldn't need to be registered. I mean, regardless of new rules that have come out, because that is still part of their advertisement. So getting in cahoots with him might kind of help.
It is, and I plan either a visit or a conversation. Happily, he's in Manhattan. I'm about 100 miles away, so I plan to get together with Brendan. He was one of the members on the remote ID, and so he and I had an opportunity to talk, and he invited me down to Manhattan. So, yep.
Sweet. I mean, I don't really trust DJI because they don't have really any kind of investment in the hobby.
Well, that's kind of changing.
They do now.
Yeah, they're trying to take over the hobby.
No, I don't. So here's the thing: is I and we can get into a debate on this, but as somebody who has used the DJI goggles and somebody who has thoroughly dissected them, I'm not gonna sit here and say that they're not interested in the FPV hobby. They have been for a while. I mean, they had a previous set of FPV goggles come out.
Well, I didn't just hold on. I didn't say interested. I specifically said invested.
Well, right. Invested is interesting because
exactly.
There are a couple of things that are going on with DJI. One is they're building a manufacturing facility in California, and 2 is they are clean room creating a piece of software that they can offer to the U.S. federal government. So those are both, those are capital and then big expense type investments. So I'm impressed.
I guess. Well, no, I they're doing a lot. They have done a lot. I'm not going to deny. You can't deny the progress that they have made with some of it. But I guess maybe it's the whole. It was put a really good way by somebody, and I can't remember who it was. That you guys remember that movie Hackers, right?
Yep.
That entire culture has overflowed into this hobby, and that's what this hobby was built on.
Well, I mean, yes,
open
and no.
source. I mean, open source is the only reason we have this hobby.
Well, yes and no. I would casually kind of
That's where the quads. That's where the quads were built. They were built at a college. The first time I ever heard of them, there was a bunch of
Right.
people at a college doing open source.
On the software
but-
side, I would tend to agree, but then it's
But on the hardware side, you've got,
No, that's the hardware came from a bunch of college students doing open
So-
source.
It came from a Wii game controller.
Nintendo.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it literally came from a
exactly.
closed source system. So, it's give and take, but you got to understand that DJI is yes, they are focused on the commercial side, but over the last couple of years, they've kind of been breaching into. I mean, I think they started kind of on the hobbyist side because when the Phantoms first came out, they weren't really geared towards commercial. Commercial drone use wasn't really something really highly thought of at the time, and it was a slow progress into that route. So I think they kind of started in the hobbyist side, graduated to commercial, but in the last couple of years with the Spark coming out and the Mavic Air and some of these smaller ones that they're creating, they've kind of broached into the hobbyist community. And while they're premium hobbyist models, they're definitely hobbyist grade. And so, and with the FPV, with the digital FPV system, I think they're kind of breaking into the hobby a little bit more. And I would say that, the innovation that they have brought kind of set the bar a little higher, and that's nothing but a good thing, and
they definitely shook up the whole
they sure did.
What do you call it? They shook up the whole market.
The whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it did.
What's also interesting to me is the choice that DJI made when they decided where to slice what they would build and what they would not build on their FPV digital system. They're not building the flight controller. They're not building the motors, the frame. They want the hobby to continue to use and build that. They're working on command and control as well as the video. And
I thought they had just come out with a flight controller that compats, like a direct flight controller that goes with their system.
I haven't seen
they're selling one, but
Kakute has one.
Yes, right.
And I think there's
Other companies have made
iFlight
them.
has one.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what
okay.
that's what I've seen as well so far.
just more specialized for the air unit. But
But that's what I want to see. Like, I want to continue to see that.
Yeah, and I think that's what as things kind of broach the market and become popular. I mean, that honestly, the DJI FPV headset, I mean, it kind of broke on the market and was instant. I mean, it was built for FPV users. It genuinely was, and
except for the latency.
And honestly, I pushed it pretty far, and I didn't have any latency. But
I've got no issues with it.
Have any of you guys watched any of my videos by chance?
I can't
Probably
say that
not.
I
I
have.
don't think I posted any of them.
Yeah.
So that was a trick question.
No. I have a tendency to spew things sometimes when I get excited without thinking.
I will say Rotor Riot's gone all in with them.
No, yeah, they did. I'm a little bit mad at them.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, guys. Is everybody kind of has their niche. When I was first getting into the hobby, Rotor Riot was about 6 months after I got in. Steel was there. Everybody was flying aliens with kissed out aliens and whatnot. But when you're just starting out and you want to, figure out what you're going to use, there's going to be people that are gonna fly what they appreciate, and Steel's one of those. I can appreciate. He finds what he likes and he sticks with it, and that's kind of something that I've kind of taken to heart personally in my flying. I find something, I stick with it until I find something better. And I will say I do get the luxury of being able to test a lot of gear and seeing what's out there, but at the same time, I have my go-to. I know if I'm I will be the first to admit I'm a Lumineer motor fanboy. Everything I fly is Lumineer motors. I love them. They've never done me wrong, and that will be my first go-to motor if I ever have to pick one. They're not the cheapest, but for me, they're the best. So, and you're gonna find what you like, and you're gonna roll with it. So, and Rotor Riot, honestly, HD fits their style. And
Yeah, well, their whole MO these days are geared towards beginners.
Mhm.
And with these new flight controllers coming out, the new frames that are all geared towards DJI HD system, I mean, you only have to solder some motor wires,
and
and
that's
that's it.
Yep, it's
Everything
absolutely
else
the
is
easiest
plugged
to
right
build
in.
right
It's going to
now.
get more
yeah,
people into the,
and,
well,
and think
hopefully.
about it, guys, and a lot of us sitting here, in this chat right now, we're experienced. We've been doing this for a couple of years. We know our stuff. But when push comes to shove, what's most important? That our culture of modding and hacking it all together needs to continue, or that we get new people into the hobby?
The flying.
That we get new people into
That's
the
the
hobby.
flying.
It's always a balance for me, because I think it's a big part of it. It's a big part of the safety that we have, is that people have to learn so much.
Right. But on the flip side, if we don't get new and fresh people into the hobby, what happens to the hobby?
Well, exactly. That's why I say it's like a
Well, right,
balance.
yeah.
So
One thing I will say, if I still had those Predator Fat Shark goggles,
Mhm.
I would have quit a year ago.
right, and I mean, I'm still flying HD2s. I have them. I love them. I've flown HDOs. The new HDO2s sound fantastic, but
Yeah,
right
they do.
now, right now you got this triple battle going on. Do you go DJI? Orca's coming out here pretty quick, or HD2s or HDO2s. I mean, it's
Sky
so
Zone.
Yeah, Sky Zone too.
Sky
yeah,
Zone.
you got the new Sky Zones. I forgot about those. Thank you.
030.
Yep.
Uh,
So,
my, this is really funny because you guys, you forget that just a short while back, you would have just creamed a nut looking in a box goggle, seeing something you never saw
Yeah.
before.
That's
Now,
funny.
you guys, I tell you, I like you guys have heard me talk before. I put in some of the air shows that we have up here in
Yep.
Washington State. I put a lot of people in box goggles for the first time. Oh, by the way, I like the MA little rib there because because I push EAA.
Right.
Because we have a lot of EA up here.
Yeah.
But I did. I am a member of AMA, of course. But I did, and I am a certified instructor now through the AMA for EAA. We have a thing going on where we got a bunch of pilots building some planes and then putting some cameras in them.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's about 16 kids.
That's great.
But anyway, the conversation, guys. It doesn't matter if you can see out the window. It's just the point that you can see out the window.
Right.
Well, that only takes you so far, though.
Well,
guess.
yeah, of course it does, but there's a whole lot of us guys that fly line of sight. I'm 62, and you'd be surprised how limited I am with old growth firs all the way around me.
Right.
Yeah, I live in the north, Pacific Northwest. We have timber mountains and other things like that. So we're limited anyway. In 600 feet, 700 feet, we got some stuff that we can get some air. But other than that,
I
it's
think
just
you
about
meant
getting
to say
people involved.
400 feet, right? I'm sure.
No, we can go 800 in uncontrolled. But my flying field is actually at the end of the runway of the international airport.
Oh boy.
And it's been there for 35 years.
Wow.
Awesome.
And we have a really good working relationship with the airport and the port. Yeah.
There you go.
It's not bad at all. In fact, he comes to some of our barbecues. The port manager comes to
Perfect.
barbecues, and I put him and his wife in the hood and took them around a little flight. And they thought, "Oh God, that would be too expensive to get to." And then I introduced them to a whoops. No, it's not.
Right.
go.
Right.
There you
And then
go.
I went and then get some gym stuff going. I teach at the gym 2 Wednesdays a month, open to the public for indoor fun flies.
Yep.
Excellent.
Open to the
So-
public. So there's more things that we can do.
Agreed.
Yep.
I love it.
You guys get the memo from the FAA regarding pretty much adding all the federal detention centers as
Oh
no-fly
yeah,
zones?
I did.
Yeah, you're flying over them now? Is that a problem? I'm only kidding.
Well, we do
Just
have a
kidding.
couple up in Wisconsin, but no.
Yeah.
I looked at the list and I was like, oh, that ain't gonna affect me, but
Exactly.
still,
Yeah,
I did.
I got 6 of them on the other side of town, and
There you
they've had signs up for like I don't even know how long now.
Well, I can't remember where it was, but here we had our first drone delivery here, not too long ago on the national news in the prison. So I mean, it's like, they got nothing. Commercials got nothing on them.
Right.
What testing?
So I would, to kind of wrap this up, this segment up, I would, I welcome anybody who wants to invest in our hobby, and just for the simple fact that it brings new blood, new ideas, new innovation. Whether it's DJI or somebody else. I mean.
Yeah, and plus, I agree completely. And if any of us want to do beyond visual line of sight over the next couple of years, it's going to have to be one, equipped drone. It is going to have to have a lot of telemetry, GPS, probably some type of additional
transponder.
Right, a transponder. Yeah. So, but that's if you want to fly beyond visual line of sight. So,
thank God I still have, thank God I still have Bruce. Well, I'm old, and it took a lot of him and his whiteboard to even get me to the understanding of where I am today.
I'm only 1 year behind you.
But I wasn't computer savvy. It took me a month to figure out how to click on you guys.
Oh boy, that's awesome.
All right, over to you, Josh.
So, I know I've talked about this for the last couple of meetings, but I did throw a post up on Facebook about the videos. If you do have an opportunity to, and I'm not looking for much, guys, just something to kind of personify some of the stuff that I put in the post, and I'll relink it here in a second. Let me grab that real quick.
Maybe you can show me how to copy something over to the.
Yep, I got it here.
Control C, Control V.
So
it was locking. I was trying to copy over an image file, and it wouldn't. I had a little.
Nope.
Yeah, it said nope. Not in this channel.
Something to kind of hit on some of these topics, and I'm working on a couple of videos as we speak. So. And keep in mind, it could be something you go out and fly and film. It could be a little vlog, and we're not talking like a half-hour vlog here, guys. I'm talking like 5 minutes. A couple of the videos I'm going to do are going to be a couple, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. They're not going to be anything, that is going to take a lot of time. But we do have confirmation from the FAA's social media team that anything that we put out during Drone Week with the Drone Week tag on it will get amplified by their social media team. So that's definitely something from a recreational perspective that we want to get pushed out there, because that's just gonna, it's gonna show the folks that are involved in that and engaged in that how proliferate hobby UAS are, and the FPV hobby itself. So just keep that in mind. If you've got a couple minutes, if you've got a couple hours to create a quick video, please help us out. Just if you could just post up in that video on that Facebook post which ones you're tagging, so that we can kind of keep track of that, and then we'll talk about how to get. I'll put a post up on how to get those to us so that we can post it up during Drone Safety Week. So, yeah, that's a big deal for us, and we'd appreciate any help that anybody could provide. So,
When
any
do these
other
have to be in by?
let's see.
Next week?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll try. I have surgery though in a couple days, so
understandable.
Any
You
recording
gotta post that
until
stuff, Josh, on the general channel.
So yeah, I can post a link to it real quick.
Yeah, do that for us old farts.
Okay, can do. Let's see. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to copy over with any kind of formatting, so just bear with me. There we go. There's the wall. One second. I had this pulled up. Apparently I closed it. Okay, so November 4th through the 10th. Now keep in mind that recreational is going to be the 9th and the 10th, the Saturday and the Sunday. That's going to be the recreational part of that week. So if you could get them to us by the 4th, that would be fantastic. If it's sometime during that week before the recreational, that's fantastic too. If it's the day of, send it over. We'll get it posted. Okay, we're going to be all hands on deck for getting that stuff up. So, all right.
I wish I could guarantee something, but I can't right now. It's been balls to the wall over here.
So I understand that. I believe me, I do. I'm a very busy individual myself, but if you can do it, fantastic. If you can't, no judgment coming from me. So how about that?
Sweet.
All right. So with that, if there's any more questions, I'm happy to help field them. I think Dave's audio kind of died out. So
Yeah,
I don't have
I had to unplug and plug back in.
Weird. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment and a suggestion that, as people have noticed, DJI released their new drone that's under 250 grams today, and they're definitely pushing the fact that you don't have to register. But as we know, there's a common misconception that a lot of people have that just because it's under 250 grams, they think they don't have to follow all the regulations, which everything but registration, you still have to follow all the same rules. So as much as we may not agree with some of those rules, we still have to follow them and make sure people understand that they're out there.
They're easy to follow.
Yes, they are.
It's not like we're we're having to put a big effort out there to be safe and in common sense and normal anyway.
Nope.
No, but you still can't fly more than 400 feet. If you're within 5 miles of an airport, you still have to use the LANT system. If you're a Part 107 pilot, you have to register it anyway.
That kind of stuff is going to soften and save. They're not gonna lock our kids up.
I do get pretty reckless with my whoop, so.
Well,
I don't take my props off when I hook it up. I'm pretty sure. Yep, I keep the props on.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean that.
Rein it in, Steve. All right. So, unless there's anything else, I will go ahead and wrap this meeting up for this evening, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Did I miss a meeting?
I don't think so, Josh.
Cause what meeting were you talking about with
that was when we talked about the remote ID. That was a couple, not last meeting, maybe the one before that.
Oh, okay.
So if you don't remember it, go back to the YouTube and check it out. Listen to it. We have them on podcast too. So.
Roger.
All right.
Thank you.
And then Dan, I don't know if you guys did see it. Dan did post the thing to the DAC meeting, the PDF, the 100 and some odd page document there. So give it a read. If you've got any questions, hit us up. Okay.
Sounds good.
Oh yeah, I listened to that whole meeting the whole damn day at my work.
All right. Well, you guys have a great evening, and thank you all for your participation.
And one quick tip: the next time you listen to it, you can play it back at 1.5 times speed and listen to it really fast.
That's awesome.
Bunch of chipmunks.
Good night, all.
See ya.
Gentlemen.
Later. Goodbye.